this morning, I want to emphasize or re-emphasize what we started speaking about last week. What makes a nation great? What makes a nation great? A lot of people might be looking at me and saying one to another, what's my own business with the nation? What's my own business with what's going on around me? I need to sort out myself first. When I sort out myself, then we can be thinking of the nation. But the truth of the matter is that if you don't sort out your nation, you may not be able to sort out yourself. You may not be able to sort out yourself. As long as your environment is upside down and there's no equilibrium, there's no peace, there's no joy, it is unlikely that you yourself will have fullness of joy. The second reason is that you yourself are a nation. You yourself are a nation. You are in the process of grooming and developing a nation. Yesterday, I had the privilege and opportunity to go to my mother's hometown, a place called Okigbo. It was founded in the 15th or the 16th century, thereabouts, by warlords from Ile-Ife, who left Ile-Ife and were going to fight a battle in Ondo, and then they settled in Okigbo around 18-something, I think. I'm not so sure. I can read it up and explain to you. And then it was just a collection of about 12 or 30 people that left Ile-Ife under the leadership of my great-great-grandfather to set up this place called Okigbo. But today, Okigbo is a little town. As a matter of fact, it is two little towns, because around 1931, there was a quarrel in the city, and some people relocated to across the river to a place called Ifewara. Ifetedo, I beg your pardon. Ifetedo, Ifewara is the other city, the third one of them. Okay? And now, as I was driving through Okigbo, driving through Ifetedo, because I went to see both Obas, being relatives of mine, I was just amazed and amused in my mind that a little collection of people from 18-something have become two big cities. You need to study what makes a nation great, because one day you yourself will be a nation. You yourself will be a nation. And Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 4. Deuteronomy chapter 6 verse 4 says, is Moses speaking to the children of Israel. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one God. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these words which I command you this day will be in your heart. Nationalism starts from the heart. Nationalism starts from the heart. These words which I have shown you or said to you, you shall put it in your heart. Not only that, you shall teach them diligently unto thy children, and you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk in your way, when you lie down, when you rise up. You will talk of them when you sit down, when you walk, when you lie down, when you rise up, when you sit down, when you walk, when you rise up, when you lie down. Every single moment of your life, you shall talk of yourself as a nation. You shall bind them for a sign on your hands, upon the frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them upon the post of your house and upon your gates. And it shall be that when the Lord has brought you to this land, which he has sworn to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, to do you great and goodly cities, which you did not build, houses full of good things, which you did not fill, and wells that you didn't dig, vineyards and olive trees you didn't plant, when you have eaten and you are full, you will not forget the Lord that brought you out of slavery into the house of God and destroyed bondage in your life. You will fear God and serve him. You will fear God and serve him. Don't get God angry so that he does not destroy you. What makes a nation great? A lot of people in Nigeria especially, disgruntled and dissatisfied with our nation, the state of security, the state of lack of progress seemingly, the state of the economy, the state of the environment, the lack of infrastructure, lay the blame sometimes squarely upon our leaders. They say we have not had the right kind of leaders. The leaders have not led us right. But the truth of the matter is that what makes a nation great is a little bit greater than just leadership. Indeed, in fact, if God blesses you with the privilege of good leadership, then they can direct the nation in the path of greatness. But the principles of greatness are available and possible for everyone to see. And if every single person within that nation, within that household, can agree to the principles of greatness, then the nation will be great and it will produce the right kind of leaders. Moses, speaking to the children of Israel, says, I need to give you the fundamentals of what will make you a great nation. The fundamentals of what will make your people great. And he was speaking to all of them and not just to a selected few who were leaders in that place. So for Nigeria to be great, for your home to be great, for you to be a great person, somebody needs to speak to you and let you know the fundamentals of what makes a nation great. One of the challenges of Nigeria today is that we have not been able to speak to ourselves collectively, and agree amongst ourselves the fundamentals of what makes a nation great. You can show me the map of Nigeria, the original map of Nigeria, for the people of Nigeria to see. A lot of you are not students of history. You don't go back into the beginning of beginnings about how all these things that we see and we are faced with begin to really give us a lot of pressure and tension. And we just go to beer parlor, we go to parties, we go to offices, and we're talking, and we're arguing, and we're fighting, and we're angry, and we're disappointed, and we're frustrated, and we're pointing fingers without going back into history to understand the fundamentals on which Nigeria was created. Before the year 1914, there was nothing like Nigeria. There was nothing like Nigeria. In the 18th and the 19th early centuries, there was nothing like Nigeria. What you had was a collection of different states and establishments who were in themselves reasonably great people. Reasonably great people for the level of understanding and exposure at that time. When the Portuguese first came to Benin in the 15th century, they wrote that when we got to this great empire, we saw a people of greatness. These people had built for themselves significant houses where they all dwelled in splendor. They had an underground aquifer, an underground sewage system. They had built for themselves one of the longest walls of defense that anybody could have. They had built for themselves lamps on the streets so that they had street lights. Their splendor was greater than the splendor of Lisbon. That's what the Portuguese said when they saw the Benin Empire when they came there in 1450 something. What did they say about the Oyo Empire, or also about the Ijebu Empire, and also about the Ife? As for the Ife people from which I descend, they have the arrogance and the temerity to think that the world started in Ile-Ife. My cousin or my nephew, the Oni of Ife, says that Noah's Ark is resting somewhere in Ife. As for the Oyo people, they say that their descendants came from a guy called Nimrod or Lamurudu. They call him Nimrod in the Bible, is there, or Lamurudu, who came from Mesopotamia and came and established something in Oyo Empire. So if you look at the history of Nigeria and the history of people around Nigeria, they can trace themselves back almost to where Adam started from. But what makes a nation great? As for the Fulanis, they never really were in Nigeria ab initio in the first place. They were just a descendant of migrating people, migrating all over northern Africa, who were looking for various places to settle, and they came only in the 18th century, and they overran the whole of the north and changed the Hausa settlements and the Middle Belt settlements they found there into emirates through their brother and their leader, a gentleman called Usman Danfodio. So here we have Nigeria as the British left us in the year 1960. The northern region, overtly exposed, overtly emphasized, bigger than it could have imagined, a little western region and a small eastern region. The reason why they created Nigeria like that was that Nigeria was created to fail. Nigeria was created to fail. You need to understand that so that you can have a better perspective of what you are dealing with. Nigeria was created with all the fundamentals that will ensure that it was never cohesive, never united, and never together, so that it will eventually great. So the first thing, yes, those were your leaders. That was Saudana of Sokoto, that was Zik, and that was Awolowo. Those were the three gentlemen that sat together in a constitutional conference in 1954 in London and began to chart the path of Nigeria. And they created very, very strong regions that had their own constitutions, had their own governments, had their own parliaments, had their own premiers, and those premiers were stronger and much more relevant than even the Prime Minister of Nigeria. So strong was the Saudana of Sokoto that when it was time to elect a Prime Minister for Nigeria, he said he wasn't interested and sent one of his assistants, a gentleman called Tafawa Balewa, to go and be Prime Minister in Lagos under his instruction and beckoning to his authority while he remained in the big north to look after what he thought was slightly more important than the entirety of Nigeria. What makes a nation great? Number one, a united people with a common vision. A united people with a common vision. If the people are not united, if they don't have a common vision, that nation can never be great. If the people are not united and they don't have a common vision, the people can never be great. The problem with Nigeria is that we are not yet truly a nation. We still think in terms of tribe, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of village, and sometimes in terms of hamlet. We think in terms of tribe, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of village, and in terms of hamlet. We are more important as a tribe than we are as a nation. So there's no feeling of nationalism, there's no feeling of togetherness, and there's no feeling of belonging to one nation. That's why people are talking today of restructuring, because we still have not got it into our minds that we are one nation. What makes a nation great? The Bible says, "Hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel, a people united with a common vision." the people of Israel are great today because they're one people with a deep nationalistic fervor. They are first of all Israelites before they belong to any tribe. So Israel is more important than the tribes that make up Israel. What makes a people great? Hear, O Israel. This is what Nigeria has become, fractionalized further into things that are not feasible or recognizable, so that we keep our divisions alive and everyone wants to be a lord unto himself. But you need to see what a gentleman called Benjamin Netanyahu said about Israel. Olu, can you find for me the tape about Benjamin Netanyahu?
It's a tremendously strong economy. And I'll tell you, we made it stronger by moving Israel to free market principles, which are
a united people with one voice, one common identity, and one determination to succeed together. It is no mistake that the U.S. is called the United States of America. And Britain is not really Britain, but it is called the United Kingdom of England and Wales, or Great Britain and Wales. The unity of a nation makes that nation great. But in Nigeria, we're fighting tribe against tribe, tribe against tribe, and we're not able to make progress. That's why our old national anthem says, Nigeria, we hail thee. And it says, though tribe and tongue may differ, it says, but we stand united as a motherland. Though tribe and tongue may differ, we stand united as one motherland. It was deliberate to bring about the unity that is needed in a nation. Number two, what makes a nation great? A common deity. An agreement with a common deity that we call our God. An agreement with a common deity that we call our God. Everywhere people believe in one God. But Genesis 11 brought confusion, disagreement, and the devil brought small idol worship due to people's laziness and man's desire for worship. But typically, one nation under one God. A people that love and fear their God will be strong and they will do exploits. A people that are willing to be obedient to his will. Every nation, they become great by obeying the principles of God, united under a deity that they all recognize and agree as their God. Hear, O Israel, this our God is one God. You must come together under the fear, under the tension, under the oversight of somebody greater than you that you call a God. So whenever you have religious division and division along lines of religion, it is unlikely that you'll have a great nation. And what are we doing in Nigeria today? A lot of division along the sides of religion. Then you may say to me, Pastor, what about places like China? What about places like Japan? What about places like Singapore that don't even recognize God? Yes, that's their religion. Secular, no God, atheism, out with God, but they come under one strong and important constitution that bears rule over everybody. So everybody is afraid of what they call the constitution. But in Nigeria, we don't have any constitution we can celebrate. We don't have any constitution that was brought up by the people. So the United States of America, when they set up America, they said, we the people agree to be united together under this constitution. America didn't start great. They had their civil wars all over the place. The wars of Confederacy, the wars against slave trade, the quarrel everywhere. But one day, they dropped their guns. They came together. They sat around the table and they agreed that this is the way forward for America. Until we can drop our guns, sit together, sit round the table as equal partners and agree that this is the way forward for Nigeria, we may not be able to make the progress that we want. A one nation under the obedience and the rule and the peace and the righteousness of God. Peter said in Acts chapter 10 verse 35, in every nation he that feareth him and walketh righteousness is accepted by him. Proverbs chapter 14 verse 34 says, righteousness exalted a nation, but sin is a reproach to that nation. And 2 Chronicles chapter 7 verse 14 says, if my people that are called according to my name shall humble themselves, pray and seek my face, I will turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven, I will forgive their sins, I will heal their land. The land cannot be healed when we are fractionalized along lines of religion and we cannot accept what God that we desire to serve. In your own homes, your homes cannot be in peace if you do not agree on the God that you are serving in that home. In your own lives, your lives cannot be at peace unless you decide on the God that you are serving in that home. That's why the Bible says, do not be unevenly yoked. What has righteousness got to do with darkness? What has light got to do with darkness? A lot of ladies, especially when they are under pressure, tend to settle for any kind of man that comes around. That's when you hear, Pastor, he's this and this, but I want to marry him. Pastor, he doesn't go to church, but I want to marry him. Pastor, he's not really a believer, but he's a nice guy. He's a kind guy. He's a generous guy. He's a lovable guy. I want to marry him. It's okay, you want to marry him, but I can assure you that a few years down the line, the issue of religion, the issue of worship, the issue of what God to serve will come up, and it may scatter your marriage. I have not seen any marriage serving different gods that has really been very successful. If it looks successful on the outside, you can be sure that there's a lot of tension on the inside, and there's one or two people that are not quite happy, they're not quite satisfied, they're not quite enjoying that marriage, but they are tolerating it and accepting it because they feel they have nowhere else to go. One nation under one God will become great. Number 3, a teachable people. A teachable people. A people willing to learn. A people willing to be educated. A people that are informed. And a people that are exposed. He says in verse 6, teach these words that I command you. Let it be in your heart. Teach them diligently unto your children. Talk of them when you sit in your house. Talk of them when you walk in the way. Talk of them when you lie down. Talk of them when you rise up, and you shall bind them for a sign upon your hands. One of the challenges of Nigeria today, ladies and gentlemen, is the ignorance of the masses. The deliberate ignorance of the masses. That's why when Awolowo started free education in the West in the 50s, everybody was in a panic. Everybody was in a panic because they knew that an exposed people will corner the lies of our colonial masters and bring about a stronger nation. So they decided to work against it and to scatter it and to keep the people in perpetual darkness. A people are destroyed when they don't have any knowledge or understanding. So if a nation is going to be great, we need to fix the educational sector. We need to make sure that everybody is able to go to school. We need to ensure that people are exposed. We need to ensure that people are able to learn. And today is not just learning that you learn in university, it's learning that will give you a skill that will make you employable, a skill that will make you able to start your own business, a skill that will make you add value to the economy. That's why a lot of people go to school, they graduate with all sorts of degrees, they come out looking for jobs, they cannot find jobs because they are not employable. A lot of people come to see me all the time. Pastor, I need a job. I need a job. I need a job. You sit with them. You ask them questions. You interview them. You find out their passion. You find out their interest. First of all, they have no passion. Secondly, they have no vision. Thirdly, they have no interest. Fourthly, they have no skill. Fifthly, they have no determination. They just want a job. You cannot get a job if you don't know the kind of job you want and you don't have the skill and the training to do that job. That's why David O will earn more from his natural skill than many professors who have been to many degrees when they are earning degrees that are not relevant to the facts and the environment of the society. A teachable people, an educated people, an informed people who know exactly what they want and they know their right from their wrong. How did Singapore become a great nation? A young man called Lee Kuan Yew went to Europe, went to London, Cambridge or Oxford to school, got there and saw the streets of London, saw the underground, saw the bus stops, saw the precision with the people who ran their government and the environment, saw the beauty and the architecture, saw the greatness of a people who were educated, exposed, and informed, and he went back to Singapore and said, we can do this in Singapore. And he focused, first of all, on education. He made sure that every Singaporean child went to school as far as they wanted. He took the best of the best that went to school and put them in the civil service. He says, I need the best brains to do the best things for the best people of Singapore. He insisted that there must be no illiterate in the whole of that tiny island. Secondly, he created an environment where there was peace, where there was no rancor, where there was safety. And then he said to the Western world, bring in your investment, bring in your companies, bring in your industries, bring everything. Come and settle in Singapore. Then he said, what does Singapore have? No natural resource, but it has a good waterway, a good waterway. So he dredged the waterway, dredged the whole waterway, made it deep enough for all sorts of ships to come and berth. And he made Singapore a center of trade and transformation and transmutation of enterprise. So if you are going from China and you are going to Africa, or you are going from China and you are going to the US, you had to stop in Singapore to change your vessel, to exchange your goods, and to ensure that you had further transportation further down the line. And that brought in a lot of commerce, a lot of income, a lot of money into this place called Singapore. But it started with education. We must ensure in Nigeria that we educate our people. We educate our children. We inform our children. We train them at home. We give them home training. We discipline them. We give them a focus. We give them a direction. We tell them what is right from wrong. A lot of you parents are tolerating nonsense from your children. Your children are misbehaving. Your children don't have respect. Your children don't have courtesy. Your children don't know right from wrong. You allow them to do anything. They watch television till 12 midnight. They play games all over the place. Some of them, if you don't carry your jeeps to pick them from school, they refuse to enter the car. Some of them, if they don't do what they want, they throw in the tantrum. They fight, they force, and then you are running all over the streets of Lagos thinking that you are making money. You bribe them with gifts. You bribe them with presents. You bribe them with all sorts of things, and you are creating a bad nation. A nation of confused children. A nation of children that have no background. A nation of children that have no education. A nation of children that have no respect for their elders. I see them everywhere I go. Children that have no respect. Children that don't care. Children that tell their daddy, shut up. How can it be possible? Children that tell their daddy, mind your business. Nibo Omotani. How can that happen? You must train your children. Train up a child the way he should go. When he is old, he won't depart from it. Some of the things I stand on today, Fola Egbe trained me. Fola Egbe trained me. And Jerry reinforced it. In my home, there was no quarrel about discipline of children. No quarrel. When my mom is coming home from work, you are at attention. No matter where you are. As you hear that 404, do pa pa pa, you stop football. You stand by the road and wait for her. As she's coming, I'm picking up her bag as she is carrying her basket. As she's walking into the house, we're following her. Onward, Christians. So she enters her room. We're standing by the door. She has a shower. She cleans herself. She comes out to the dining table. We're there. By the dining table. She's eating until my mother belches. You're not going anywhere. You stay there. Where your wambe? Where kini wambe? She's eating 7 pieces of meat. Your head is cracking. Where crackayakata? She will eat you. Even my daddy will even offer you a piece of meat. My mom, she will eat. You will finish eating. She will rub her stomach. Say, Mommy, yes, I'm okay. Can we go? We're about to score a goal when you okay. Okay? But be back at 6:30. Be back at 6:30. They don't born you well. You come at 6:35. My mother used to beat us at the back of her leg. Oh, terrible. She will, you will face the wall. She will beat. We need to be careful about beating these days because some parents are a bit eccentric and a bit crazy, no doubt. But you must discipline your child. You must show your child a vision. You must bring up a child the way it should go. You know what's the problems of Nigeria today? A lot of our leaders are not disciplined. No home training, no background, no exposure. They don't care. They don't care about anything. Corrupt like no man's business. Corrupt like no man's business. Corruption in my house. Forget it. Forget it. My mother would say to us, hard work doesn't kill. Go and work. From age 6, I was making my bed. I was cleaning the gutter in the outside of the house, sweeping my room, washing my own clothes. You know, we're in Ibadan recently, and we're joking amongst ourselves. No, we're in England. No, America, for my brother's birthday. And we're just joking amongst ourselves. And my brother said, Ituah, do you remember that mommy's yellow bowl? Mommy's yellow bowl. I said, yeah, mommy's yellow bowl. Mommy's yellow bowl. You must rock mommy's yellow bowl. What's mommy's yellow bowl? At the end of the week, all her underwear, size 50, dump inside the yellow bowl. Dump it inside. Put small omo there. She will leave it outside her door. Ituah or Aswe or Tolu must pick up that yellow bowl. According to your age. Between age 8 and 16, that yellow bowl is yours. You must pick it, you must wash it, you must dry it, you must iron it, you must return it to her room before Sunday morning. You must train up your children the way they should go. No child of Trinity House will be spoiled. We will look after them and train them and discipline them because Nigeria belongs to them. Number 4, ladies and gentlemen, and I close. A great people with great minds that think beyond themselves. A great people with great minds that think beyond themselves. Thou shalt not hate your brother in your heart. Thou shalt not anywise rebuke thy neighbor or suffer sin upon him or avenge or bear grudge against any children of the people of God, but you should love your neighbor as yourself. A great people with great minds that think beyond themselves. Matthew chapter 19 verse 21, Jesus says, if you will be perfect, sell everything you have, give it to the poor, you should have treasures in heaven, come and follow me. A great minds with great people thinking beyond themselves. Exodus was talking about the land flowing with milk and honey. I told you last Sunday that it was not milk and honey of the ground, but milk and honey of the brain. Milk, heavenly provided knowledge, wisdom, given to God at youth. Honey, intellectually productive creativeness that brings a sweetness that is therapeutic, soothing, and medicinal. The greatest poverty in the world is the poverty of the mind. And that's what gives a slave mentality and a destructive personality. A slave mentality and a destructive personality. A great mind of a great people who think beyond themselves. A lot of you don't think beyond yourselves. You think more of yourselves, your shoe, your bag, your tie, your house, your car, yourself, and no more. A gentleman died recently, the father of one of the ladies in this church, and I was going through the tributes written about him. And the lady who comes to this church wrote about her father. You were truly a great man. And she gave an example of how they'll be driving through the traffic, and the father will buy all the bread from those selling bread, dump the bread into the car, and then tell the people, go home, you've done enough. Go home, go back to school. A great mind of a great people who think beyond themselves. A great mind of a great people who care about others. A great mind of a great people who are concerned about the benefit of life to other people. A great mind of a great people who love their neighbor more than themselves. There's too much selfishness, too much greed, too much avarice, too much self-centeredness in Nigeria for Nigeria to truly be a great nation. If this nation is going to be great, you and you and you and you must love your neighbor more than yourself. You must love your neighbor more than yourself. If you love your neighbor, you won't shoot him. If you love your neighbor, you won't destroy him. If you love your neighbor, you won't sleep with his wife. If you love your neighbor, you won't sleep with her husband. If you love your neighbor, you won't tell lies. If you love your neighbor, you will help your neighbor. If you love your neighbor, you make sacrifices to make life better for your neighbor. Only a nation that truly loves themselves will indeed be great. Finally today, a willingness to work hard and use optimally whatever you have been endowed with by God. A willingness to work hard and to use optimally whatever you have been endowed with by God. A willingness to work hard to use optimally whatever you've been endowed with by God. In Nigeria, we don't want to work hard. We have this season and this feeling of self-righteousness, this feeling of gratification, this feeling of entitlement, that everything must be entitled and we must get everything. I watched a video recently of a certain Nigerian in Australia, and he was showing us vast piece of real estate, beautiful real estate in Australia. And then he was saying, look at all this beautiful real estate in Australia. This real estate, most of the people who live here are Indians. They've bought this place. They've built this place. They've made the place beautiful. Indians came to Australia like Nigerians came. But Nigerians have nothing to show for their places in Australia. It says, how do the Indians do it? One Indian comes into the community. He invites his brothers. They all stay together in a little house. And then they join forces. They work together. When they make enough money, they buy another house for the other one. They work together. They live together. Make enough money. Buy another house for the other one. Work together. Live together. Make enough money. Buy another house for the other one. Help one another. Help one another. Help one another until they become a formidable force. In Nigeria, Shege. If a Nigerian makes money, he will first of all buy Rolls Royce. He will buy the biggest house. He will throw the biggest party for people he doesn't like and show them that he has arrived. You go to that same Nigeria, somebody needs school fees. He said, I don't have. I don't have. They do not cooperate together. And it's a problem of the black man. A refusal to cooperate together, to work hard together, to have a strategy, to face a common enemy. Only the Igbos try to do it. Only the Igbos try to do it amongst us. They lift up a small child, they train him, they free him. Lift up another one, train him, free him. Nigeria, they don't care, especially the Westerners. They don't care. They want to be, I better pass my neighbor all the time. I want to be, I better pass my neighbor all the time. I better pass my neighbor all the time. They will flash through in their big cars, and they don't care who is out there. I remember when I was going through my first crisis in this life, I had lost my job. I had no car. I had nothing. And I had a driver. The only man in Africa that had no car but had a driver. So I used to call my driver. He would carry my bag. We'll be going around looking for business. Then one day, I stood in Sulere, that place in Sulere, one roundabout there in Sulere, around Masha. I stood there waiting for a bus, me and my driver. And a friend of mine, he had a brand new 190. He was driving. And he saw me, I saw him. When your eyes are full. He saw me, I saw him. He took his eyes away and he was driving. And my driver stood and said, Ogami, that's your friend. Stop him. I didn't stop him. Say, Ogami, Ojiriwa now. He's seen us. He's not stopping. The guy drove past. It was one of the most discouraging days in my life. My driver looked at me and says, Oga, we will buy our own. When I behave the way I behave and people think I'm too soft, I know what I have seen. I know what I have seen in this Lagos. At a time, people thought I didn't go to school because I was carrying video. All these video people, they can't do shakara for me. I was a video man par excellence in Lagos. Video serve. Robert was there. He knows my story. Up and down, people will be getting married. I'll be wearing jeans. They say, oh, Lord, wedding it. No. Me, I'm making money. When I tell people, go and walk, do any kind of work, they look at me and say, and pigs will fly. I say, hey, I have walked in this Lagos. I have slept on the floor in Lut for 3 months. No bed. I slept there on the floor. I have carried video. I've carried tape. I've run up and down. I have not begged for one day. Not begged for one day. I use my hands to do my work. I told one boy in Christchurch, go and walk. Go and do pom-pom. He said, go later. I said, who are you? Me, I've carried pom-pom. I've done video. I've gone up and down. I've been homeless. I've been jobless. I've been hungry. I've been tired. I've been frustrated. I've been down. Hard work doesn't kill. If you have nothing to do, go and sweep the roads of Lagos. Go and sweep the gutter. Go and carry bread in Sweet Sensation. Go and carry something. You can create your own job and your job will deliver you. There's more than enough work to do in Lagos. People just don't want to think. They don't want to help themselves. They don't want to lift themselves up from where they are. They want the society to look after them. For where? A people that know their God shall be strong and do exploits.